Well, g'day curd nerds. Welcome to another cheese making video tutorial. Today we're going to be making a cheese similar to Gorgonzola. So notice I said similar to Gorgonzola. The last thing I want is the cheese police to be coming down on me and doing another cease and desist. I know the Italians are passionate about their cheeses, so this is kind of like Gorgonzola. Anyway, I'm using a recipe from cheesemaking.com. So Jim Wallace, I think, is the author of this recipe. And there's two types of Gorgonzola. One's called Dolce, which means sweet or fresh. And the other one is known as Gorgonzola Piccante, which means spicy or hot. So this is the Dolce version, so the smooth one. It's only aged for 90 days. So it's in its ripening box. It's still ripening. There won't be a taste test portion of this video. This is just the making video. The taste test will be in about 2 months' time for this cheese. Anyway, enough waffling. Let me get on and show you how I made a cheese similar to Gorgonzola. So firstly, make sure you sanitize all of your equipment and place it on a clean tea towel. So the ingredients for Gorgonzola are 8 litres or 2 gallons of whole cow's milk, 1/8 of a teaspoon of Flora Danica aromatic mesophilic culture, 70 grams or 2 ounces of prepared Greek or Bulgarian yogurt, 1/16 of a teaspoon of Penicillium roqueforti, I'm using the strong variety, half a teaspoon or 2.5 millilitres of calcium chloride diluted in 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water, half a teaspoon or 2.5 millilitres of single strength rennet diluted in 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water, and 2.5% of coarse non-iodized salt by weight of curds, and you'll see that a little bit later in the video. So clip on your thermometer and make sure that all the cream has been incorporated back in. But firstly, we're going to rehydrate the Penicillium roqueforti in 1/4 cup of milk for 30 minutes. Whilst you're waiting for that to rehydrate, heat your milk to 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Now initially I heat mine directly on the stove and then place it into a water bath with my precision cooker and bring it up the last couple of degrees. So I just cover that until it's at its target temperature. It's not quite there, it's about a degree off. So about 10 minutes later, I just check again. Just give it a quick stir to make sure the cream's incorporated back in again. And then check the temperature to make sure I'm at 32 or 90 Fahrenheit. So we're going to add the yogurt to the milk. Just pour that in. If there's a bit left in the jug, just scrape that out with your stainless steel spoon. Now remember that yogurt has some mesophilic and some thermophilic starter cultures in them. Now just whisk that to combine the yogurt through the milk. It's only a little bit of yogurt. And then we're going to add the Penicillium roqueforti solution. Just dip a little bit more milk in there and stir it out so it all goes through, and then give that a quick whisk as well. That way you know the mold spores are all the way through the milk. Now finally we add in the Flora Danica, the aromatic mesophilic starter culture. So just measure that out and then sprinkle that over the surface of the milk. So because this is a freeze-dried powder, we're going to allow that to rehydrate for 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, we're going to stir the culture in to the milk. So now we're going to allow the milk to ripen for 60 minutes or 1 hour. This increases the acidity of the milk. So give that a quick stir to make sure no cream is floated to the top. Check the target temperature before we proceed any further. Yep, 32, spot on. That's Celsius, that is. Now we're going to add the calcium chloride. This helps set a better curd by adding back some soluble calcium into the milk. You only really need to do this when the milk has been pasteurised. So we're going to add in the rennet now and stir that through for no more than 1 minute. So we're going to cover that up, make sure no dust gets into our milk, and we're going to allow the milk to set for 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes, we're going to check for a clean break. Yeah, that looks pretty firm. We'll just pop the knife in though, twist, and yep, that's a nice clean split. So I'm going to cut the curds into 2.5 centimetre or 1 inch cubes. I'm doing a checkerboard effect there to start with, and then I'll do it at 45-degree angle. Notice I'm not using my curd harp because the lines between the strings on the curd harp are 1 centimetre, which is about ½ an inch. Too small for this cheese. To just give that a very gentle initial stir to break up any of the larger curd cubes. And then cover that back up again and allow the curds to heal for 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, you'll see a bit of whey has been expelled, but during the next 15 minutes, just stir the curds every 3 to 5 minutes just to prevent them from matting. We don't want too much whey to be expelled during this cheese because Gorgonzola style cheese is very moist. So you can see I was cutting up a few of the larger cubes as well. So I'm stirring about every 5 minutes. Just a quick stir prevents matting. And matting is the curd sticking together. And then cover again. Notice that I'm keeping the curds at the target temperature the whole time. Just getting rid of any floated, it's solidified cream usually, that floats to the top. Just give that a quick stir again. And that's the final 5 minutes. We're going to allow that to rest for 10 minutes now, just so the curd settles down to the bottom. Makes this next step a little bit easier. I've got myself a 2 litre jug there, or 2 quart jug. Now using a whisk, not a whisk, a sieve. That's not a whisk, this is a sieve. And we're going to remove, using a ladle, 2 litres or 2 quarts of whey. There we go, spot on. Now you can use that whey for lots of other things. So during the next 15 minutes, we're going to stir the curds again every 3 to 5 minutes to prevent matting. I just stir mine every 5 minutes. So this is after the 15 minutes of stirring. You can see the curds have shrunk a little bit and have expelled a little bit more whey. Now we remove some of the whey just to stop it acidifying as much. It's not a very acidic cheese. I'm going to allow the curds to rest for 15 minutes. This makes draining a lot easier. So just line your colander with a loose weave cheesecloth. Just give it a quick stir, just stop matting, and then drain it through the cheesecloth. Get every other bit out with your hands, nice clean hands. So give that a quick stir to prevent matting when it's in there draining. We're only going to drain it for a minute or two. So break up the curds with your hands. Now the reason we're breaking up the curds like this is because we want there to be pockets of air in the cheese after it has consolidated when we put it into the basket in a second. This helps the veins develop because of those pockets of air after we pierce the cheese. So make sure that they're well mixed like that. So I'm putting the basket back into the pot in its water bath still. I'm going to transfer all of the curds into a sanitised 165mm or 6.5 inch basket. I found this to be the perfect size. So we're going to be keeping the curds at 32 degrees Celsius or 90 Fahrenheit during draining. That's why I've got the basket in the pot again. By keeping it warm, it helps the acid continue to develop, albeit slowly. So we're going to allow it to drain for 4 hours, and during that time, turn the cheese every 1 hour. Now, initially, it's okay to have the basket directly on the bottom of the pot, but you can see there's some whey expelled there that I've tipped away. No pun intended. And I'm going to have to elevate the basket now. So I'm just using 2 small ramekins to elevate it, so it doesn't sit in the whey that drains out of the cheese. So after 2 hours of draining, there's still a fair bit of whey coming off. Just tip out the stuff in the ramekins there. Don't want them overflowing. Now, the cheese is firm enough that you should be able to just flip it over in its basket. There we go. Plonk it back in. And pop the lid back on and keep it warm. Oops, it's falling over. All good. I could take a little bit more water out, but there's a minimum depth for the water for the sous vide. Anyway, one final flip at the 3 hour mark. Now you notice that the curds haven't consolidated like a normal pressed cheese would. You don't need to. You need that open structure for a blue cheese. So after the 4 hours of draining, we're going to place that on a mat, or 2, or maybe just 1. Can't make his mind up. Right, we have to figure it out, Gav. You can do it. We have to weigh the cheese because we have to do 2.5% of salt per weight of the curd. So I'm just putting a clean mat on top of the scale, just tearing that back to 0 and then putting the cheese on top. So it worked out to be 1.152 kilograms or 2.54 pounds. So 2.5% of salt is 28 grams or 1 ounce. So make sure you weigh your cheese. Don't use tablespoons because the different grades of salt can weigh differently. So I'm using a coarse salt there. And we're going to apply 1/4 of that to the top surface of the cheese and just gently rub that in. This is just an estimate, so it's about 1/4 of the salt. So just loosely rub that over the top surface, and that will form a brine when combined with the whey that's dripping out of the cheese, and then pop that back in the basket, and that'll all absorb into the cheese. So we allow that to drain overnight. Make sure if you've got any insect problems, not that we do, but I do pop a trusty umbrella over the top. So the next morning, we're going to take it out of the basket and salt it with another quarter of the amount of salt we had. Sprinkle that over the top, just give it a rub, and give the sides a bit of a rub this time as well. Pop it back in the basket, then pop the umbrella back on again. So in about 12 hours, I think this is the next night, I'm just going to take that back out again, salt the top again. There's a little bit of salt left. Rub it on the sides as well. Pop the umbrella back on again. So I don't think I showed the final salting, but I salted it 4 times, you know. 4 quarters equals a whole. So I'm just spraying my hands with white vinegar there before I touch the cheese. So we're going to transfer that onto a onto a mat and then into the ripening box. So place a lid on top. We're going to mature the cheese at 11 to 13 degrees Celsius, or 52 to 54 Fahrenheit at 90 to 95% relative humidity. During this time, it'll start to grow mold. So about 7 to 10 days, this is about 10 days, it's time to pierce the cheese so we can get the blue veins inside the cheese. Now, by piercing the cheese, we're allowing oxygen to get into those fissures and cracks that we hope are in there because we didn't press the cheese. So just quick white vinegar wipe over the hands again, and then just dry those off. Prevents any molds or yeasts from being on your hands while you're doing this process. Obviously your probe, or you can use a number 2 knitting needle as well, but I use the probe off of the thermometer, and that's been sanitized as well. So just pierce that all the way to the bottom. So I space it about every 2 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch. I do an outer circle, then I do a couple of inner circles of piercings. So once the first side is complete, I then flip it over and repeat the process. Now I do it at some angles as well, just to make sure that I can get access to all of those crevices that we hope are there. So pop it back into the ripening container. Now I turn about every once a week, turn the cheese, but I'll let Gav talk about maturation. So there you have it. It's been aging in the cheese fridge now for a month. It's still got 2 months to go. So let me just show you what I've done with this ripening box. It's nothing special. So this is the standard ripening box that's available at littlegreenworkshops.com.au. So I've got the cheese on its mat, as you can see there. It's covered in blue mold, but also in the mat, to keep it humid enough, I've got it's a dishcloth, but it's not used for dishes, it's a clean one. And it's just a little bit moist, just to keep the humidity in the box. And you can feel in the box it's a little bit humid, which is good. There's no moisture on the bottom, it's just a damp cloth, which is great. So on the pad, now I've got clean hands, so I'm just going to do its weekly flip, and all we do is just flip it over. It's been pierced, as you saw in the video. A little bit of blue mold on my hands, let's get rid of that with a paper towel. So it's ripening very well. It's got blue-green mold all over it, which it should do. Hopefully that's penetrating into the structure of the cheese. It was a very loose structure. I'm hoping to get a lot of veining there, so that will be really good if that happens. Also, you'll notice there's a little bit of white mold growing on the outside. That's usually just Geotrichum candidum, which makes it kind of the skin go a little bit wrinkly, but that's no big deal, that's fine. So don't rub that off, whatever you do. It's just part of the normal flora of the cheese. So I'll just put that back in its box again. So I'm very pleased on how this cheese is progressing. Like I said, I've been turning it once a week during the maturation. So total maturation time of 90 days for this cheese. So hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, taste test in a couple of months' time. But you can purchase all the stuff you need to make this cheese over at littlegreenworkshops.com.au. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a little like and don't forget to hit the bell when you subscribe to get notified of more cheesy content. Well, thanks for watching, Curd Nerds, and I'll see you next time.